The Intellectual Gentlemen's Club.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Intellectual Gentlemen's Club. I am your host, Jason Abbott, and joined with me once again for my co-host is the illustrious Matthew Abbott.
Hello.
How's it going, guys? It's been a couple weeks since our last episode, so I just wanted to say everybody that's on Facebook, Twitter, on the website, making comments and whatnot, really appreciate you discussing online with us. It gives us that warm, fuzzy feeling in our heart, so thank you very much. Today we're going to be sponsored by Adventure, so get out there and get some. You're going to hear about quite a harrowing tale today. Our affiliate sponsors are, once again, Amazon.com. You can go to our website, click through our link that's right on our site, brings you to the Amazon portal. Anything you have in your wish list or anything you purchase during that session gives us a little cut of that. Doesn't cost you anything. It just comes off of Amazon's tab, so it works out for all of us. So if you guys want to support us, use that. There's also we are also sponsored by Onnit.com. That's ONNIT.com. They are a total human optimization company. They have all kinds of different vitamins, health products, nootropics, fitness equipment. They just got in the brand new kettlebell on the Primal series. They have the chimpanzee, the gorilla, and now the orangutan. So they're pretty mean looking. If you guys are into fitness and things like that, check that out. So today, obviously, Matthew Abbott is with me again. And today we have E J Snyder. He's a 25-year combat veteran of the U.S. Army and hails from North Carolina. He is an adventurer, a motivational speaker, actor, stuntman, military technical advisor, and a survival expert. He has recently been featured on Discovery Channel's Naked and Afraid with the Terror in Tanzania episode. And he has a pretty robust resume if you go to his website.
What is his website?
Yeah, EJ, what's your website?
Hey, everybody. First of all, let me just say thanks for being on here. Thanks for talking with me. Hello, America. And it's an honor to be here. Love to chat about things, and I'm excited about this. I've been excited all week about it. And my website, as I'm my own self-promoter, manager, and everything else, is a Wix website. It's www.ejsnyder72.wix, that's wix.com/skullcrusher, one word. And that's my moniker, and follows me around. And at that website, you'll see great things like a little brief bio about me, my resume, some portfolio stuff, mostly involving the entertainment stuff. Most of my military resume is not on there yet. I have some stuff I'm doing in the world of all the news, media stuff that's going on with me, all the updates, the latest adventures I'm going on. I'm collaborating with a guy getting ready to endorse his survival blade, which is going to be a big thing we can talk about later. That's on there. And pretty soon I'm going to have some demo reels up there and some other video stuff as I get it in. So it's about 90% complete. There's also some T-shirts and some other stuff you can go on and get at that website. Appreciate the support. And a percent of everything I sell goes back to the Wounded Warrior Project, which is one of my dearest charities. I do a lot of work with them, a lot of work with the USO right now, and I've been actually moving into the anti-bullying campaign. So I'm very busy, and at that website we'll keep you up to date. And you can also go to Facebook, go to the fans of EJ Skullcrusher Snyder. I have a fan page there. Friend me at EJ Snyder at Facebook, or go to Twitter at EJ Snyder 72. So I think that's plugged everything right there.
Cool. We'll throw them out at the end too. It'll be into the episode descriptions too. Thanks for joining with us, man.
Yeah,
appreciate
thanks.
you being on.
No, I love I love your guys' title, the little meeting of the minds, the intellectual man. I like to think of myself. Most people look at me at 6'3", 240 pounds as a knuckle dragging
meathead, right?
Sasquatch, but when you look a little deeper inside the skull crusher, you'll see there's a heart of gold, and there is compassion for my fellow man in there. And I I do like to exercise the brain when I can.
Right on, dude.
Yeah.
Hey, you just mentioned, I didn't know you were part of that, the Wounded Warrior Project. I donate to that every year by proxy by doing the Tough Mudder. Have you ever done a Tough Mudder?
I have not. I'm planning on it. I've just kind of been aware of these things. Just this last beginning of the year, I was out in Charlotte, and they had the Great Spartan Race. So,
Oh, yeah.
getting exposed to these things, and the adventure side of me is like, yeah, this is right up my alley. So, I'm coming off of some injuries right now from Tanzania still, and I'm just back to working out and getting back ready to go for whatever comes next. But
how long ago was that filmed?
Okay, we filmed. Kelly and I filmed The Naked and Afraid, Terror in Tanzania in January through February. And it was a 21-day project. Obviously, we're out there a little bit longer than that on the front and back end.
Sure.
But we were actually a working pilot. So we were under a lot of extra pressure to make sure that the show got off because there was no pilot to sell this thing. It was happening as we did it. And
Well, it was a great pilot.
Yeah, goddamn, man, it was full of action for sure.
Thanks. Yeah, it was my Super Bowl, as I say. People say, "Why did you do that?" And I gotta get people straight. It's not reality TV. What we are out there doing is a docuseries. It's a documented history of what two total strangers, go through in 21 days, and we're not contestants. We're survivalists.
Yeah.
There's no prize at the end of this thing. There's no $100,000, $1 million. No prize, just pride. That's what I say. It's all about pride, getting a chance to walk the talk that you've been saying for all these years about what you can do as a survivalist. And therefore, it was such an immense challenge, which I had no idea until I got out there how grand it really was going to be. But it was my Super Bowl as a survivalist. And I took it on, and I did it. And at the end of it, I was like, hey, let's get a cheeseburger in me, let's get a beer in me, maybe a pizza, and let's do this again, because I was ready to go again.
That's awesome, dude. Yeah, and I think you bring up an important part that this is not a reality TV show, and that's something that I even have to struggle with my kids because, if they're watching TV and they see a reality TV show, they think, hey, this is reality. But when you're watching fucking Honey Boo Boo or Dance Moms or whatever crap is on, like, that kind of show, I have to explain to people, like, listen, you have to read a little deeper in the lines.
You shouldn't even be watching it.
Well, yeah. I mean, and there's a couple shows that I just cut off. My children are not going to watch, but
right.
My son, who's 8, he watched all the Naked and Afraid episodes with me. He was
That's
really
awesome.
into them. I'm kind of an adventurer too. I'm not as extreme. I haven't done a 21-day naked adventure in the wilderness, but
as far as being a survivalist, I mean that's got to be as
Super Bowl,
big
right?
as it gets.
Yeah. I tell you, for me, I'm a modern day survivalist. I'm a behind the lines enemy survivalist. I'm a military survivalist. I still work out as an instructor. I'm a contract instructor for the U.S. Army. I've been working out there about 4 years out at Camp McCall near Fort Bragg in North Carolina, and I work in what they call the SEER program, Survival, Evasion, Resistance, Escape. And we teach soldiers how to survive bad days and probably the worst survival situation you can wind up in as a POW or behind enemy lines without any help, and as maybe in some cases a hostage to a terrorist or a criminal organization. And it's important stuff, and I enjoy it because I get to be around soldiers again. I get to teach survival. And when I went to the school in 96, it changed my whole life mindset. And I started thinking, what am I going to do when bad times come up? I want to be that guy that people look at and say, hey, he's our guy. He can lead us out of the situation. He's tough as nails. He's big. He's going to take us to the end. We can count on him no matter what. Cool under pressure. When the zombies start creeping up from the bowels of the earth, I'll be the guy you want to get on his back and follow to the end.
Sure.
And I said, you know what? I started my self-study on survival at that point and really pushed towards those things, natural disasters, man-made disasters, apocalyptic type events. And my whole mindset became on self-reliance, very nomadic. But, these guys out there doing the doomsday prep, and I'm like, hey, that's cool. Yeah. I got you now. I got you on the map. I got your grid location. I know where you're at. So when I need supplies, guess who I'm coming to visit? Especially when you told me you don't get any weapons, because we're going to roll up in there with my 300 like-minded thinkers, and we're going to, set up camp with you and make a deal. Otherwise, you're going to have to, succumb to some other things. But in seriousness, I just kid there, but I really like the fact that I know how to, if it's bad, I can get out there with very little and do really well. And this challenge took all that away from me. And getting back on the point of, they throw you out there and they're like, what do you think about going out there naked? It's like, look, I'm going to take myself out of my comfort zone. You're going to take away all my little extra knives and little extra strings and all the stuff I usually have in my pack, my bug out bag. and we're going to make you a caveman. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. And let's see what I got. And I think soldiers and Marines are the most adaptable individuals on the planet because you can throw them out in any situation with very little. They might not do it the prettiest. They might not do it the best or the right way. But at the end of the day, they're going to do it, and they're going to get it done. And that's what I hoped I showed out there through my adventure, because that's what I really pride myself in, being at 47, being as hard as any young man out there, but with a lot more wisdom and a lot more life experience to bring to the table. And, after 25 years of serving in the military with some of the best men and women on the planet, seeing walks of life from every race, creed, religion, every place in the United States, cities, country farms, backwoods, everything, you learn how to adapt to dealing with people at every level. And
I think that's what that show what it broke everything down to. Because, I think at first it's when you hear that, they're going to be dropped off in the middle of nowhere naked, you don't really understand how big that is until you watch the show, and then I think that's it made you connect with who you have even more and work through the mental issues, which I think is probably just as hard as the physical issues sometimes.
Absolutely, Matt. You're exactly right. And that's what made this great for me, because it was like, when you're in a survival situation, you never know who you're going to get thrown out there with. Mm-hmm. You could be complete strangers like we were, never met. And then there becomes all these other issues in a survival situation, which makes it that much more real. And when you sit there on your couch and there's all these people, we got season 2 approved and all these people are putting in their applications. Yeah, send me out there. I can do that. It's a whole other story when you're sitting on your couch watching this, being an armchair survivalist, and you get these YouTube darlings, I call them, who talk a great plan and they show you a great video on YouTube about surviving, and they're in a controlled environment. They can stop the tape, restart it. They're not tired. They're not hungry. They're not cold. They're not hot. They're not thirsty. And they're not under a lot of extra stresses. When you put that out there, the YouTube darlings, I'm sorry, just don't live up to the challenge in a lot of cases, because you have to be, one, honest with yourself about your strengths, your weaknesses, and your skill set. Your partner has to do the same. Then you have to be honest with each other. Mm-hmm. Once you can get past that, then you can be honest with the situation you're in. And when you're thrown out there, and when that Land Rover drove away, and I was sitting there and I just threw all the worldly possessions I had left in my life in the back of that vehicle, and the main big thing I wished was still with me was my shoes, and you're sitting out there with your derriere and all your manhood hanging out in the wind, and you look at the vast openness of the Serengeti. I had never been in Africa before. And you're looking around and you hear the wild animals in the distance making their noises, and you see them walking. Oh
my gosh!
Yeah, that when I watched the show, it's one of those other things when you see the previews for you, you don't think about how dangerous the animals are.
Yeah, it's just TV, right?
But,
yeah.
I mean, there's 1,000 bugs out there that could kill you, probably.
Just, not to mention the lions and the hyenas and anything that's out there. EJ, let me ask you. You were talking about your partner, Kelly, that was out there. How did you guys? When you first met, that had to be a little awkward and all that. I can't remember. I know that there was one episode where they just hugged it out. Did you guys hug it out? What happened?
Yeah, we walked up and I see my little speck of a partner in the distance, and I can't quite make her out. And I'm sure she's looking at me, and we're walking towards each other. I can only imagine what she's thinking about my big 6'3" knuckle dragon carcass walking towards her. She's probably wondering, is that a Sasquatch or what is this? And as you come into focus with each other, you start asking all those questions about what is that skill set she's got. Can she count on me? Will I let her down? Will she let me down? All those thoughts race through your head. And then all of a sudden you're right in front of each other. And for me, it was like, you see one naked person, you've seen them all. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't that big of a deal. And you say your kids watch this, and the kids get it. The nudity is like out the window for them. But we met each other, and I extended my hand, and she's like, she's just like, let's just hug. Boom. And it was like, okay. It was a little awkward, but then it kind of broke the ice and the nervousness that I think both of us had.
Yeah, for sure, man.
And the biggest thing was I have a priority list. When I go into a survival situation, I start, you have a survival task list. Well, for me as a soldier, the biggest thing with wild animals around is security.
Sure.
So that's on the top, and then clothes was next. Of course, hey, we're naked. But that clothing priority fell so far down the list, it became really irrelevant by the end of it, because after about 10 steps in Tanzania, the land of the thorns, I had about 30 thorns in my feet, and I was like, good God, I need some kind of footwear, because this is going to be
Is that the wound that you're still recovering from right now?
No. I healed up very quickly. I have a very extremely high constitution and a very freakish healing rate that is just really abnormal, but it goes very quickly. So, I walked around a septic foot for the shows about day 12. It was actually a little bit further, about 2.5 weeks into it before I went out with it taking me down. But they cut it with a razor blade, no Novocaine. Oof. Went in about an inch.
We heard your heroin screams, bro.
Hey.
Tough to watch, man.
Can't even imagine.
It was. I've had 2 staph infections, and I would say the level of pain that septic foot had was probably 4 times as great.
Wow.
And so it was really piercing. And I'm a, old time Spartan type warrior. We do battle cries. We let our energy out. And if it's negative energy, it's got to come out in a, war cry, so to speak. That's the way I'm very emotional. I wear my emotions on the sleeve, and whether it's joy or anger or happiness or frustration or pain, it's coming out. And that's how it comes out. I even
noticed in your positive mannerisms, you were like that as well. You're like screaming out, fuck, yeah, we got it, when guys got fire and
whatnot. You got to be enthusiastic about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a pressure cooker, and eventually when that goes off, you definitely hear it. And so it was pretty excruciating. But once they cut in there and dug out those 3 little pieces of the acacia thorn that went in there, it was in there an inch. And I kind of overheard the guy talking to Steve outside the tent, and I wasn't supposed to hear this, but after he initially looked at my foot, he's like, it's a good thing you got this guy here, because in about an hour, his foot would have been, I think they call it a septicemia, would have taken place, and that infection would have hit his bloodstream, and he'd been gone.
It's amazing that you were able to continue, dude. It really was.
Yeah, but people's like, oh, you got your footwork done by a doctor. And I'm like, hey, I'm an old ranger from the Army. We call that taking a knee, drinking water, facing out, pull security, and then you pick yourself back up, put your pack on, you keep moving on. And that's what I did. There was no way I was quitting that challenge no matter what. And Kelly and I went in there as a team. We had our differences because we were 2 polar opposites, but we made it work.
Do you think they matched you? Did you think they put you guys together because you were such polar opposites?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Makes for good television.
Yeah. There were a lot of things that drove me crazy about Kelly. But in the end, Kelly and I were each other's yin to each other's yang, and we figured out a way that, if you're a team, you set differences aside, you have to give and take, and you help each other because you got to lean on each other at some point. Yeah. And, our relationship turned into the sister I never physically had. I never had a sister in my life, and it got to that point where we had such concern for each other and respect that it was a brother-sister type relationship. Yeah, we're going to fight. Yeah, we're going to argue, but in the end, we're there. We love each other, and we're going to keep moving on.
That's got to be one of the most purest bonds you could possibly have with anyone. I mean, going through that, butt naked. I mean, that's as pure as it comes. Yep. I would guess.
You see each other's weaknesses and every in an intimate sense of emotion. You see each other's highs, lows, failures, triumphs. Poor Kelly had never been to Africa before, and she was from Alaska.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's a change.
Fair skin, didn't do well in the heat. The sun would eat her up. That's why we kept her mudded up as much as we did. I brown like a coconut. I spent 7 years in Hawaii, Italian blood, American Indian blood, so I get pretty brown. So I was concerned for her because once you start burning, the dehydration gets way worse and it's magnified. And the poor thing, first question I asked her, dangerous situation, when's the last time you cycled? She's like, what? When's
I remember that.
When's the last time you cycled?
Yeah,
because
valid
we
question.
got wild animals out here and they're going to smell you.
Oh, yeah.
I said, I'm not trying to be ugly. I'm not trying to be
pervy.
Just, just make you sick, but it's a viable survival question.
Yeah, totally.
And she was like, well, I am now. And I'm like, okay, that's great. When do you end? She's like, in about 3 days. I'm like, all right, well, we were moving to get to the water. So I was like, well, we'll be mobile. That'll help. We'll just have to make sure we have extra security at night and ways to deal with it. And then after she had finished, it was the female body under that kind of stress does so many weird things that 5 days later, I'm sitting there about tending the fire and I look up and I see Kelly walk up and I look at her leg and she's got blood going down. And I'm like, Kelly, what'd you do? I was concerned. I thought she cut herself. She had the knife. I thought, what? Oh my God. And I looked up and then I realized what was going on. And she was like, looked at me. She's like, oh, she started getting so, I mean, she's a woman. And so I'm an old fashioned guy. Men, by God's way God made us was to complement each other, and we're different in every way. And men take care of the women, and that's just the way I am wired. And when I saw her and she got so vulnerable when that happened, that look on her face, all I did was I was like, oh, my God. And all I could do was look at her in the eye and say, it's going to be all right, and had her sit down and just she had that vulnerable look on her face for that one moment. And we knew we had something to deal with again. And she was in shock a little bit by it. And the only thing I could do was, I'm a father and a husband, was, put my hand on her shoulder and say, hey, look, it's going to be all right. We'll figure this out. We'll get, why don't you go down to the water where we used to clean ourselves. There was one of the water pools we reserved just for bathing.
Now, when you're saying water, the water pool, it was more kind of like a shit pool than an actual water pool, if I remember right. Because, for people who haven't seen the show, let's break down the rules. You drop your clothes. You each get one item. Is that correct? That's right. So the two items that you guys brought was a pot, and what was the other one?
I brought a knife.
Okay. And so you had the option to bring what you wanted to bring.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, what I thought was happening, because this was unfolding as we went, they had us each bring about 5 or 6 items and number them 1 to 5 or 6, whatever your first item was, second choice, third choice. And I thought they were going to give us stuff as we went and make life easy as we went, because the rules were very loose.
Because that was the pilot, so I guess you wouldn't really know. Yeah.
So I decided, all right, survivalists use knives. That's my main tool of surviving. And years ago, I went to a smaller utility fighting knife, because in the military, I'm a foot soldier. Ounces equal pounds, pounds equals misery, so we go to lighter stuff. So I went from a Bowie knife, which I carried for years because it was good for chopping and doing heavy work and fighting even, and went to my smaller knife. I also always go to the woods with a tomahawk with an 18-inch handle. It's a viable tool. It's a great weapon, and I throw it very accurately and can hunt with it. And I have an Indian-style fighting technique for hand-to-hand combat with knife and tomahawk in hand. So I always bring those two. I usually have a small skinning blade around my neck on a leather cordage that can be used for a bowstring. And I use a sawback machete across my back for those other jobs. Well, I wish I would have brought the machete if I would have known how much wood I was going to be chopping.
I think the important part also was that, Kelly decided to bring a pot, or they allowed her to have a pot, but that really kept you guys hydrated and kept you guys alive. Am I right?
Yeah. At first, I was like, geez, just like a woman, bringing a full pot to a survival situation. And then I was so thankful.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
What else would you have used to boil water or anything out there? I can't think of anything that...
Yeah, you're not going to find fresh water in the Serengeti.
Yeah.
No, and here's the deal. I had thought, I had done some primitive study before I went in about, carving wooden bowls out of trees and how to do all that stuff with burning and everything. And there was just nothing usable there. The resources in the Tanzania on the Serengeti, it was the most unrelentless, unresourceful, unuseful, unforgiving place I've ever been on the planet. There's just nothing worked. The normal things that we were used to, cordage, bark, trees, they were just freakish. It was like I was like on another planet, it seemed like to me.
As far as the water, did you guys have a map of where the water was, or did you guys just kind of
That's a good question. They gave us this very, how can I put it nicely?
Crude,
very childish, cartoonish,
crayon drawing
looking map that was
That's
very
mean.
not to scale, and there was these 5 square looking things in a line, and I'm like, Kelly, either this is the water, or it's 5 very large concrete marble pillars. So either we're going to march to water, or we're going to march to our tombs, because
or lion's
that's
den.
something that looks like a water thing on the map, and maybe it's an oasis. Who knows? Let's get going. And so that's how we knew we're kind of where it was. And we had thankfully, I'm an expert navigationist as a Pathfinder in the Army, Ranger. Those navigational skills I was very good at. So navigation was one of the things I do really well, and I'm also a tracker. So when I finally found some animal tracks on the ground, we knew out there that was going to lead to water in the dry season. So we got on some animal trails and kind of followed them that way, and kind of looked at the terrain to the map, and we got there. And like you said, that brown water hole, when I saw this, I was like, this is it? What kind of, is this a joke? And then you realize there was about 5 of these little water pools there. And we're like, okay, well, we'll use this one for bathing in because it was a little bit deeper. We'll use this one for our water. And then eventually we found one for a food source, which became the fishing hole. And
yeah, I remember that.
All we could do is look at Kelly's pot and go, damn, Kelly, I wish you would have brought a bigger pot. Man, that was tough.
How long did it take you guys to find the water? Because it's hard to gauge in an hour, or, in an hour show how long everything really takes.
We traveled across the Serengeti. We got up early that morning. We, on the show, it seems like we moved right out, but we actually took a knee inside the wood line to the rear of that meeting tree, and it was actually a zebra graveyard. Everything was dead. All the wood was dead. Plenty of firewood, but nothing else really useful. And there was no water there other than in that tree. So I knew we needed to get to know each other, assess the situation, and get moving. And so we really took off the next day, and we spent a good 6 to 8 hours trekking across the open Serengeti in that heat.
Not even for sure if that's where you were going, not knowing, right?
Yeah. I knew it was dire because about 6 hours into it, I was looking at Kelly, and I'm like, I knew she was getting really dehydrated, and I train at a dehydrated state, so I understood what my body could do and how much further I could push it because I trained that way for that situation. And I was like, wow, I don't know what my plan B is. I was like, we could start digging, but that's a lot more energy. We're already sweating.
And in the desert, that's probably not going to work out that great anyway, right?
Right. It wouldn't have been very good because then we would have to get either way. We were going to have to make fire to boil it. And so we just went for it. And I was like, hey, we're putting all the chips on the table. Everybody's all in at the poker game. Let's hope we don't check out and lose. And we didn't. We fortunately got there to the right spot. And that first night, we knew that, hey, it was getting dark. We could deal with the water situation in the morning. And actually what we were doing, which you didn't see won't see on the show, was it actually rained. God sent us a relief at the end of the day, and it kind of rained on us for about, I think it must have been 20, 25 minutes straight, and it became a torrential downpour at one point.
What was the temperature out there when it was raining?
It was 100 degrees in the heat, a little bit over that, and then when it started raining, the temperature would drop immensely because that rain, guess where it likes to go? It likes to stop in the northeast and see old friend Mount Kilimanjaro, which is covered in snow and ice.
That's right, yeah.
And it came down on top of us, and when that rain hit me, it was like 1,000 ice cubes hitting you at once. So then your body core temperature starts going from overheated to super cooled.
Yeah.
And that made for a dangerous situation.
I tell you, if I was going to be in Africa, the only place I'd want to hit is Kilimanjaro.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'd like
to see Cape Town maybe too, but I don't know. Just trekking through Tanzania doesn't really, naked and afraid. It'd be a challenge that if someone could cover my bills.
Only naked, not afraid.
So how did they do that? Like, because you strike me as a more or less normal guy. Did Discovery Channel pick up your bills for a month, or how does that work out? How did you afford to take all that time off and pay the bills?
Thankfully, I have very understanding, supportive fellows at my work. Nice. And they're the best, the most great Americans, retired military, all of them. and still doing great work for our country in what we do. And they were understanding, and I was like, look, I got to check out. I'm going to have to take a leave of absence without pay. My wife and I just kind of figured out what was our bill situation at the time. How can we float this? Let's move some money here and there. And at the end, you get a small stipend. It was about enough to cover my pay plus some late fees on some bills. And like I said, it wasn't about the money. It was about pride.
Sure.
Of course.
And so you go out there and you have that extra stress on you. Is my family for a month? Are they eating? Are the lights still on? Is everything cool?
Yeah, you missed your kid's birthday. That was kind of
Yeah, that was a big deal. And actually to go out there, Discovery approached me last year, 2012, in about March, to actually try out for dual survival with Cody Lundeen.
Oh, cool.
And so I went out there, and then they figured out, well, you're kind of a Mad Hatter. Cody's our Mad Hatter. You can't have two Mad Hatters at the tea party. That just doesn't work. Somebody's got to be the rabbit. So I obviously was not going to be a rabbit. And so they're like, hey, we like you a lot. We're just going to give you a call here when something else pops up. And my good friend Joe Ted, I got the gig, and me and Joe are great friends. And I was really happy for him. He was exactly the rabbit they were looking for. So I wind up with this, as a Mad Hatter would, naked and out in the middle of the Serengeti with a broad, a bowl, and a blade. And that was it. And just looking at this mass undertaking. And so you're out there, and you're just, you're just got to put some of those things aside, knowing that my wife is she's a military wife. We spent a lot of years together through good times and hard times and not so good times. And, I've been on so many deployments. My family's kind of used to me going. But when Discovery approached me with this idea, I looked at my son, and in my family, turning 18 for the men in my family is such a huge deal.
It's a rite of passage.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you can tell I'm a very bravadist man's man. And that to me was a big deal. And I told my son, I said, look, Ty, Discovery wants me to do this. It's your birthday. If you tell me you want me at your 18th birthday, I'll tell them, hey, you got to hit me up for the next episode or something. I can't do it. And he's like, Dad, you've been doing this kind of stuff all your life. I get it. When you get back, we'll go to Buffalo Wild Wings, and we'll have a father-son birthday like we always do, because that's our thing. We always go out every once and again as father-son and do that. And he understood. But while I was out there, his birthday came, and it hit me so emotionally.
Well, you're emotionally, you got to be just, at the bottom of your game after however many days. I mean, you were probably like 15 days in, 20 days in, close to that, and you're at your breaking point already, obviously, right?
Yeah. I mean, mentally, I'm very tough. Emotionally, I'm pretty stable.
Everybody's got their breaking point, though.
Yeah, but when it comes to things I love in life, I'm so passionate, and my kids and my family, my wife, that is what's I'm passionate about in life, and so that was a heart moved message for him. And I was glad when he got to see it in episode 7, Bears All. And he smiled, and it was so good to see that reaction from him.
Oh, I can't imagine how proud he was of you.
Yeah. So, and then you get those things. And in the military, people don't realize, you miss a lot of birthdays, you miss a lot of anniversaries, and that's there's just certain things you'll never get back in life. And while I was out there, I didn't realize, I went out there with one thing in mind, to test myself and make sure I could do it and show everyone that I am as hard as I say I am. And what I got out of it was so much unexpectedly more. God tested me out there every day on the Serengeti. We went to battle. We went to arguing with each other. There's a scene in there where I ask him for a break, and you can't script that stuff. And then there's this crack of lightning and a thunderclap, and it's like, whoa, he's listening. Oh, and so I've had all those you see me out there openly praying. And I mean, I'm not a Bible thumping kind of guy, but you have to have faith in things. And a lot of times, you don't have anything else out there. You turn to the one that is out there with you.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. What's your religious or spiritual views on things?
I'm born and raised Christian. But I went on a soul searching time in my life where I was looking for the answer. What was the right thing? And I studied a lot of world religions and got a lot of answers to a lot of questions I had. But I'm very much a spiritualist in the sense that I understand nature is best. And that's where I commune with God the most, because
I feel the same way.
outside, I understand that. I get it. That's what moves me. It might be the Native American heritage of mine, that spirit, that ancestry in me, that's why I relate to it so well outside. And so for me, religion's a very personal experience. For you, it's a very personal thing. And though I like churches and I like the communal effect of churches, I think sometimes man's use of church gets in the way. And I don't think that's what God intended. And this is just my personal opinion. But I make sure every day I pray as much as I can all the time throughout the day. But I make sure that God hears me, and hopefully he answers me when I need him most. He's always been there. And so for me, it's the most moving times is when I'm on those high mountains in the world, because I feel I'm closer to God and I connect better. And
couldn't say it any better than that.
Yeah,
man.
I've heard you say that before, Jay.
Yeah, I mean, I one of my things is going out to Colorado and hitting 14ers, and that I've had almost a spiritual awakening up there. I was out there last December and I climbed a peak, and that was solo. Nobody was around. It's like December 12th. Yeah, it was December 12th this last year. And I was completely up there alone. It took me probably 6 hours and whatnot. But also when I was up the previous summer, I scattered my father's ashes up there, and it was kind of an emotional feeling on top of Mount Elbert. That was the tallest one out there. But when I went back, I was out there on a work project, and I took a day after to go and climb. I really connected with something out there, man. I was like bawling like a little girl, and I'm not afraid to say it. I'm not afraid to say it. So no. You know, when I get out there in nature, whether it's the river park I've got running through my neighborhood here and I can do my running, or whether I get up north and check something out, or even if I'm traveling and down in Indiana or Illinois or something, I can always find a spot where I can just stop and recharge my batteries with nature, because that's what's really important for me.
And you're exactly right. I mean, I went out there and I say that, people talk about changing and this and that. And when you leave the military, and that's the only thing you've known for about 25 years, and you've been out here about 3.5 years trying to figure it out, there's no ad in the paper for terrorist hunting, warmongering, airborne ranger. It isn't. So you sit there and you go, what am I going to do with life? Sure. Where is I going to get that adrenaline rush? Where are the things that I'm used to when my life was full of excitement? Old soldiers just never die. That's why they say they fade away, because when you stop doing that, you do fade away. And I'm not about to fade away. I'm not going to go silently in the night. And so when I went out there's a point in episode 7 where I'm reflecting on what just happened before we get ready to make our last hike up the hill to our extraction point. And it all came to me. God brought me out there to evolve me into what he wanted me to do after I left Africa. Because I was in a pretty low point actually in my life with, just kind of lost and looking for direction about, I had a great job and my family, was there, but I felt like there was something else I was supposed to be doing, and I was getting frustrated in life about what was it. And while I was out there, he just beat me down. And, you go on a safari. I mean, talk about extreme way to safari, no clothes and out there with just a knife. And you get it because you feel so small, the speck on the earth, when you're out there with everything the way you came in the world, naked and nothing else. And you look at the vastness of that place and you realize, you look up in the northeast, there's Mount Kilimanjaro. There was another fantastic mountain to the south, and the sun would drop behind it every day, and you'd see these wonderful sunsets. And then at night, the stars would be so many, and the moon would be glowing. And
that would have to be one of my favorite parts. I can't imagine what the stars look like out there, man.
Oh God!
Oh yeah. The only place I've ever seen them as good is when I was in Hawaii on Mount Mauna Kea.
That's where they have
the observatory is.
Observatory,
yeah. Man, that is the one place on the planet, if you can ever get to, if you like looking at stars, that's the place for you, man. That's what marvels me, and that's God. That's what I get. Every little piece on the planet, you sum things up when you're challenged this way, and you're taken down to your lowest point where you have nothing. Where a pair of bark shoes is worth the money, worth a Rolls Royce to you.
It squashes your ego, whatever.
Sure, yeah.
Yes.
And I think that's what nature, at least for me, and I think that's when you really look at the grand scheme of things, it's it squashes whatever ego that you do have.
So, I mean, some people find it with meditation. Some people find it with psychedelics. Some people find it with prayer. You know, there's a wide variety of how you can, you know, put that ego down and put it in check every once in a while. But
I love breaking myself apart. That's what I love doing, breaking myself down, seeing if I could take it. And then when Kelly and I made that last 1,500-meter extreme climb up to that top of that little mountain, in bark shoes, gone through 21 days of hell, because that's what it was, because we had so little. And you look back across that place, and Kelly and I look back to where we started and all this stuff. We could see the starting tree. We could almost see up to the river valley where our water point was. And we knew we had been through something. And then the helicopter landed. And as I was walking up to the helicopter, I looked at my reflection in the helicopter right in the windshield.
Oh, yeah, that's the first time you saw yourself in 21 days. Yeah.
And I felt like Moses on the mountain, because I knew I'd been through something. You look like
it too, buddy.
That's you're right. My hair was all crazy, and I was a lot grayer. I did not go in there that gray, and it grayed me.
Yeah,
and I felt honored that God had touched me that way, and I had lost over 50 plus pounds. Yeah. And even though the show says 33, that was just a guesstimate. When I got home, I was like 205 pounds after eating for like 2 days straight.
EJ, have you ever heard of the overview effect? It's what astronauts that have been up and have actually seen the planet from either the moon or from orbiting the Earth, they come back with this great sensation, like the spiritual type awakening they've had, where they see the Earth for what it is and how infinitesimally small we are,
and how
the grand scheme of things, and where we lay in the cosmos, we're just a blip.
Humans are humans. You know, through and through.
I've not heard of that, but I sure felt that way. I'll tell you that.
It's a fantastic, harrowing journey, man, and I'm glad you guys made it out all right. I'm glad everybody made it out all right. I think something that's important to put out too is we were talking about Kelly and the partnership that goes along with this.
Right.
There was one that he drank some bad water, didn't tell his partner about it.
Yeah,
and he suffered for it, and he ended up having to leave because it was tearing him up. But when his partner was left behind, the issue was that, you know, you get into that lonely sediment, you know, you have to do double the work, all this. So it really takes on a different persona when you're out there alone. Do you think that things would have worked out a lot differently if you were alone, or do you think it would have worked out okay?
It would all worked out okay because I'm a workhorse. I never slow down. I'm like a shark. You know, I sleep a couple hours, 2-3 hours a day, maybe 4 if I'm lucky, and I'm always on the go. So I look at the best of things in every situation, and I am like a bit of a Mad Hatter, so I'm sure I probably would have been having a lot of discussions with God openly like I do. Probably started with talking to some imaginary trees and stuff just because that's, you know.
What was that movie with Tom Hanks?
Yeah. You know. And the thing in a survival situation, levity is very important. So you have to make light of situations, even when they look so ugly. And I'm a big one-liner kind of joke kind of guy. I like to joke around. I like to have fun.
But there's real high. You have extreme highs and extreme lows, right?
Yes. And I think if I would have been on my own, the loneliness would have probably been there at times, but I would have kept driving on because I don't know the word surrender. I live by a motto called "Tu sponte superstetis," and that is survive by your own will. And I believe the will to survive is so much more a greater, powerful survival thing than anything else, because if you don't have the will to live, the will to go on, the will to survive, you will die. You will roll over and you will give up.
Sure.
And skills are great, and you need them. It makes life better. But I think the will is so much more of a greater thing to have in a survival situation than skills.
Everything's just like magnified in that situation. The littlest change is the biggest change, you know?
Absolutely.
Puts things in perspective.
Yeah.
Hey, switching gears for a minute.
Okay.
We're talking about perspective and things, and you've been in 2 different wars, am I right?
Yes. I served in the 1991 Gulf War with the 82nd Airborne Division. I was a platoon sergeant. At 24 years old, I was the youngest platoon sergeant in the division at the time. And I had a big, heavy machine gun, automatic grenade launching machine gun platoon. And we also had anti-tank tow systems. And that was my first experience in combat. And then I wound up serving another 15 months when I made the rank of Sergeant Major later on when I was in Hawaii with the 25th Infantry Division, the 121 Infantry Gimlets. Shout out to my boys. 15 months in Kirkuk, Iraq, which was still a pretty big gunfight at the time we got over there. So that combat thing makes you appreciate a lot of things in life. It's a different kind of surviving thing, but you're there for a noble cause to make life better for people that have had a really sucky life. And I don't regret any bit of it, and wish at times I could have done even more. But
let me ask you, our father was in Vietnam. He suffered from PTSD for many years and eventually took his own life, unfortunately.
Oh, I'm so sorry for that.
It's been over a decade now, but it's definitely left a scar on everybody who's really known him. Yeah. Do you feel like you've suffered from PTSD, or have you known anybody that has really struggled with it? And how do you deal with it?
Yeah. You got to keep reaching out to them. And if you don't connect, you got to keep asking others to try to connect, because someone eventually will reach that person or something will happen, and you got to go out there and help them. You've got to help them find their way. And I had a very good guy that my brother died at a young age from drugs. He was about 21, and it was a poor accident. Yeah. Thank you. But this guy in the military became my brother. He really was. And I saw the toll he took, and he was, he and I had been through the same stuff, all the same deployments, and, he got out and he was so lost because that's all he knew was the military, and it just really bothered him.
Yeah, I'm sure the military guys, it's hard for them to ask for help,
Yeah.
I'm sure
the hyper masculine,
Yeah. And you really think you suffer a little like displacement disorder. Like you feel like, where do I fit in? Where do I fit in? And some guys just can't never get out of that circle. Yeah. And you got to figure, what do I need to do to break that circle so I can feel like I'm kind of fitting in? For me, I went back to acting. I started going to acting classes. I started trying to figure out what I might want to do when I get out of the Army, and that was a childhood dream of mine, was to kind of do some acting. And so that helped me a little bit. So like I said, you got to find that thing or that person that'll hit you, and that's how a lot of guys come back. The problem is right now, unfortunately, there's a lot of fakers, bullshitters out there that are bucking this system to get dollars for nothing, and I don't want to say they're all faking it. I'm not saying that. In my opinion, there's some guys out there that are not as honest about what's going on with them, and then what happens is the guys that really need it, you can't get to them, and that kind of pisses me off.
Those guys that really need it. When you're speaking about that, we had on one of our podcast episodes, we had somebody from the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, MAPS is the acronym, and we were talking with him about PTSD. They're doing a lot of different studies right now with MDMA, which is
with veterans.
With veterans, combat veterans, and which the street name is ecstasy. People know it as, but MDMA is. They're finding that, when it was really brought to the drawing board, I guess you could say, it was used as a therapeutic drug for marriage counseling, and it got into the party scene, and it kind of got overdone, and that's when it became a scheduled drug. But they're trying to do these studies, and they're having massive success with these guys, and they're saying that they're doing about three years worth of therapy in a 3-hour session.
They said that they have 300 veterans just in one state on volunteering for it. Yeah,
I mean, if you look at the numbers too, and I don't want to bash the military or anything like that right now, but there's actually more veterans that are dying by suicide than there are combat deaths now. Yeah, I think that's a big problem. I mean, are you aware of those stats, or do you know anybody that has been down that road?
The suicide rate was pretty high, and I think what happens is we have a younger generation of warriors now that have been tested to a level that we've not really seen in a long time, where they're going back, and it wasn't uncommon that guys in Vietnam era would go do a tour, they'd volunteer, go a second tour, maybe a third tour. Some guys I've heard even as many as 5 tours, which is every other year pretty much for that war. And that's what we're having here. We're having guys that are going back doing multiple tours 5, 6 times.
Right.
Their families are breaking apart because they just can't do it anymore. And imagine that kind of pressure on you.
Yeah.
And so these guys it's tough. It's tough on these kids. I mean, and when you make that mentally acceptance to defend this country, and you're going to do those things. Well, you do that, but you also think, hey, they're going to take care of me as well. And so, what the country's doing in terms of honoring veterans and continuing to help them out is really appalling. And I'll just say that that's my opinion.
There should not be one homeless veteran out there.
Exactly.
And in Detroit here, it's insane how they don't get any help. I mean, our dad went through the Veterans Hospital for years
trying to get help.
It just seems like they could sure be doing a whole hell of a lot, because like you said too, I mean, these are kids, these are kids, and their mental state right now is they're a sponge. They're growing at that time, they're most vulnerable at that time, I think,
Yeah, Matt, you stole the words out of my mouth. There's, we got these homeless veterans. We've got guys with disabilities that can't even get seen. It's taken almost a year to 2 years to get their disabilities taken care of, our veterans in olden societies, the veterans and the elders were always respected and held at the highest point in that community, that tribe. They were always honored, and they always had, they always still have experiences and things they can give back, especially the veterans.
But I think the community supports them, but I think our government is what's failing,
Yeah, and maybe maybe I was a little skewed in my wording, and what I meant was, we need to remember those guys, and we need to help them. They should get for the sacrifices of freedom. There's just, freedom isn't free, and these guys have paid a lot of prices through their families breaking up, and a lot of them have given their lives, and some are going to have mental scars and physical scars the rest of their days. That's why I work with the Wounded Warrior Project. I'm working on an independent film as a military tech advisor and a producer for a good friend of mine doing an independent film called What Must Be Done. He's going to release it hopefully this fall into some independent film stuff, but it's going back and honoring veterans and talking about these same issues we're talking about right now. And
they're important issues, man. And you don't hear about this shit on CNN too much. You won't.
There needs to be more of a discussion for it, for sure. No doubt about that.
Yeah. And it's just, for me, I always said if I ever got in a place where I became notoriety, even famous at some point, which God's path for me, whatever that is. I wanted to give back to the veterans, to the community, to wounded warriors, and give back to youth. And if I can do that, that'll be my new focus. And that's what I'm trying to do with some of the stuff I've been doing. And, I went out there and knew that it was my biggest community I was worried about. I didn't care what people thought of me. I didn't care what the rest of the world was going to say about me. But my veteran brothers, the soldiers I led, my peers, the Army, the military, and more importantly, the special ops and survival community that I live in and work in now, those were the ones I was most worried about. What were they going to say when I saw my big naked butt walking across their screen? And
so what have they said?
They've been so supportive.
Good.
I have not had one
trolls?
phallus comment, not one.
I can't imagine anybody.
So much support. I couldn't believe it. I was humbled.
How you going to fuck with that, really? I mean, you go out there butt-ass naked, like we're saying, holes exposed, the whole ball of wax, like, how are you going to say, well, whatever? I can top that? Well, how are you going to top that? Seriously.
And I was like, I did that shit, man. Whatever. Say whatever you want.
Exactly.
Man. I lived it.
You know what you did,
it.
right? Yeah.
But they've been so great, and it's been amazing. I'm just so blessed.
Well, I think you were an inspiration for a lot of them, without a doubt.
And that's the other thing that I got out of this thing that I never saw coming. I get so many emails now. In my Discovery bio, it talks about my bullying experiences as a kid. And I've got little kids, 7, 8 years old, emailing me, hey, Mr. EJ, I saw your show. You inspired me. I see you were bullied, and I know that I'll be okay. And I'm going to go tell my parents about what I'm going through. And then I get guys, in their 40s and 50s around, I'm 47. They're in my age group. They're like, man, we saw you running around with a septic foot, not even complaining, and you made this thing. And I've been sitting for 6 years on the couch not doing a damn thing. I've been to the gym for 3 weeks straight now, lost 25 pounds. And I'm still doing it every day, and it's because of you. And then I get 60 to 70-year-old women email me about my open relationship with God. And those are the people I touched that have been unbelievably wow.
Yeah, I believe it.
So you're bringing up this I wasn't even aware that you were bullied or anything like that. I saw on Twitter you were talking a little bit about your bullying documentary. What is that all about?
Okay, that is a project. A guy sought me out after seeing my bio, and the show, the Discovery, not Discovery. It's the documentary is going to be called "Broken Bones, Shattered Dreams," and it's a full length feature documentary which we plan on doing a worldwide release for. And what it is, it goes to the very subject of bullying and trying to promote this, make everybody aware of it because it's going on, and it just like when I was a kid. It didn't follow me home. That was my escape. I could go home and I knew I'd be okay, but then I'd have to deal with the bullies the next day. Now these things are following the kids home on their cell phones, at
internet,
their Facebook, social media, and it's an epidemic across the world, and people are losing their lives.
Never seen the suicides and stuff like you see now. I mean,
yes. And so Jason Loveland's of Slippery Banana Entertainment had asked me to come on. So I've come on as a producer, and he really wants me to move up to executive producing, but I've got a lot of other things going on. So I'm going to probably host the thing as well as produce on it and give to it. But what we're trying to do is start what we call the anti-bullying brigade and bring all these anti-bullying organizations because we're finding there's so many of these
they're popping up
things
all
out
over.
there.
I'm in, dude.
We need to get them to join forces.
I think everybody has experienced bullying at one time or another, and I was a bigger kid, but I kept to myself. I didn't have like a lot of in common. I wasn't really into sports in high school and things like that. And
that age, that could set the tone for the rest of your high school career.
I took some classes when I was a freshman, but they were full of seniors. They were like senior blow-off classes, and I felt my share of heat, and I just stayed to myself. But exactly when I went home. When I hung out with my friends, it was a different story, but it's almost unescapable for some kids nowadays.
Absolutely.
I try and make my kids especially aware of this, that you do not get caught fucking bullying a kid. Just do not, because it's going to be all bad news for you.
EJ, how old are your kids? EJ,
my son's 18, just started college a couple weeks ago, and he's a freshman in college, and my daughter is 14, and she's a freshman in high school right now. So...
have they experienced any bullying?
No, they haven't actually. They've been kind of, I don't want to say sheltered by living on military bases and going to those kind of schools.
They got a skull crusher for a father too.
Yeah, I'm skull crusher's kid. What are you gonna do? And that's really where that all led. I got bullied as a kid, and after a while, I just couldn't take it anymore. And I was sitting after a little league practice, swinging on the swing, waiting for my mom to come pick me up. And I come from a family that was, very poor in North Jersey. My parents divorced when I was young, so we were struggling. And my mom was hard. She was working hard, so I didn't really have anyone to turn to talk about this. And this little girl I had a crush on says, "Hey, you're so much bigger than those guys. You shouldn't take that from them." And so, by God, the next day I went to school, I was not going to let that girl be disappointed in me, right? So... I'm not saying you deal with bullies in a physical manner, but these guys were being physical. And so I decided that was it. Made my stand. I was not going to be a victim any longer. I was no longer going to be a target. And I stood up and I was accounted for. And I am a survivor of a bully. And that's the way we're approaching it. We're survivors of bullies. And then what happens then is, God puts people in events and challenges in your life for a reason. And it's to go either left down this road or a right down the road on the fork. And I decided from that point I took a right. And when I saw people being bullied, I was stepping in. I would never turn a blind eye to it. And I kind of suffer from savior syndrome from it. If I see someone in help and need, I got to help them. That's why I went in the Army. I started learning how to fight in my teenage years and started becoming a boxer and a wrestler. Started learning different kinds of karate styles because I wanted to know. I didn't care about a black belt or any kind of belt color. I just wanted to have those skills so when I needed them, I could count on them. And it fit me going to the military. And in one night of partying, one of my friends, I was in the barracks, got blindsided by this guy who took cheap shots at people and decided I wasn't going to stand for that and decided to address the dude down and went to tend to my friend. And then he tried to blindside me. And we got into one of those little barracks brawl boxing matches, and I pounded the guy a couple times, and he was down, and they kept asking what's going on. He's like, "Damn, this guy's hit me so hard, I feel like my head's caving in, like he's crushing my skull." And next thing I know, there's my nickname.
Skull Crusher.
There it is.
So I lived it by it for a lot of years. I was always into the WWE, so that persona just kind of evolved, and that's why I proudly wear it today. And it's not to say that, I haven't thrown a whole lot of first punches in my life outside the ring or combat, but I have thrown a hell of a lot of last punches. And I don't really promote violence. If you can walk away and talk your way out of it, that's what I promote. But sometimes a man's got to do what he's got to do. Sure. And sometimes certain countries and certain individuals, the only thing they understand is a black eye and a bloody nose. So sometimes that's what it takes.
Unfortunately, not everybody's consciousness has evolved where everybody would like it. You know, there are truly a lot of meatheads out there that really don't care about other people's feelings, or if they do, they stuff them down just for, you know, the sake of joining in a crowd with a type of a mob mentality.
We're in a numb society right now, a very numb society to violence. Our children are exposed to it on the TV, in video games, in the news, and they've numbed themselves. And you see it, and it's apparent in what we're seeing in our current news situations that are going on.
That's one thing I wanted to bring up to you is, I have this thing in my home where I wanted to bring my kids up in an environment where nudity was not so big of a deal. And I find this, I find it interesting in, at least in American culture, that we have no problem with any amount of violence being on TV. But as soon as you show a dick or a pair of tits
or an ass,
the world is about to fucking end. Like, the most normal thing that we're born with is our naked form. So I don't understand why that is such a big deal. And violence, which is nothing but negative in my opinion, is so blown up out of proportion, and it's everywhere. And any kid of any age can get any video game or application for their iPhone or iPod or whatever, and it's not a big deal.
I think there's a lot of answers to that question, though. It's a combination of a lot of things. But
I mean, it's culture.
It's culture, it's religion, it's media. You know, it goes on and on.
Parents.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I try to. I've always been very honest with my children. I says, whatever questions you have, I'm probably a lot more honest than I should be, perhaps sometimes.
But then they're not going to be scared to come and ask you something.
Well, that's the primary reason for me doing that. Right. I don't want them. You know how it was when we were kids, dude. It was like, well, you wait till you're married.
It was intimidating.
You wait till you're married, and you don't show anybody anything, and don't look at that. If you had a problem,
then it was intimidating. You thought you were going to get in trouble if you had an honest question about things like that. So,
Uh-oh, look out. I got caught in Uncle Jack's Foot Locker with his Playboy.
Right. Big fucking deal, man. I would rather have my kid watch something on TV where, you know, you're seeing some pair of tits in passing, or even some dick and balls or whatever, you know, than see like somebody get shot out of, you know, execution style or head cut off or anything like that. I mean, it's night and day to me. I just don't understand what the problem is, you know, with the censorship.
And you know what? The thing
that.
with the show, the kids get it. The young kids, they'll recognize me out in the street where I'm at before their parents will. And they're like, no, that can't be him. They know it. And they're just like, oh, yeah, that's Mr. EJ. And it's like really strange. But going into this thing, the title, I really hated it at first because I was like, why don't we call it Bear Essentials or Bear Survival or something cool? Naked and Afraid? Oh, my God, it's terrible.
It, man. I love it.
And I'm not, you know, the marketing guys knew, and thank God they did. And it turned out to be marvelous. But the amount of flack I got going into this, and I'm very good at staying with talking points, doing interviews, just saying a little witty joke or witty comment and turning it back onto the talking points. And so I did a lot of radio interviews before the show even aired because I'm the poster child and almost the spokesperson for the show. I don't want, and that's self-claiming it, but I mean, that's what I've been doing because I know the good in it and promoting it. And my wife even got so many rude messages on Facebook and whatever. And it's like
ridiculous.
But she stood the ground and we stayed on message together.
Strong woman, man.
Oh man, she's amazing. I'm so blessed to have Amy in my life. And, we both stood at ground. We knew it was going to be ugly going in, just like a war. But when we came out the back end and people really watched the show and got more information about it, you know, I had people trying to turn it into a porno and all this other stuff. And I'm like, look, it's not like that. No. Watch the show. Just give us one episode, and we'll hook you.
And I think that's the thing is at first it was almost seemed as like when I saw the previews that it was almost a gimmicky thing.
Like, another one.
Have them naked. But when you watch the show, you understand legit, why that was such an essential part of that show.
And it was, and it turned out to be a marvelous event. And I'm glad I was with it and on the first part of it. And I hope to do more of it. If they'll have me back, I'll definitely go back in a New York minute and want to even make it even tougher. Want to stay out there longer, do it longer.
Man. Call
just
me up,
because
dude.
that's what I do, and
not to be
people
naked
that
or
watch
anything, but
it
call me up.
think they can just go do it. It's just not that easy.
No, I don't think in a billion years I could do that.
Yeah, I would like to give it a shot. I would like to think that I could hang. I don't have very many survival techniques in my hip.
I don't think you
I'm
can do
a
it.
camper. I'm a I can be out there in
It's
the
a little
woods,
bit
and
longer
that
than
doesn't
camper.
bother me. But having the skills to build a fire out of nothing and build my clothes out of nothing and drink my water
I tell
out
people
of nothing.
just go out for a weekend. If you can stay out there with a weekend with nothing but just a knife and take all your clothes off.
Well, I'll tell you what, man.
It's not bad.
I've talked with my buddies over the years, like, when you see Les Stroud and Bear Grylls, they were doing their thing, and I know Les still is, and Bear is doing his own thing as well. But I always, that was one of my fantasies, to just get dropped into the wilderness and try to make my way out. But I want a fucking pack, I want clothes, I want a knife, I want things like that. I think that is much more doable. I give you all the props in the world, man, for doing Naked and Afraid. So
that's what I said. When I was out there, my knife broke. And we still had like a week to go because I was making all these bark shoes. And I was like, man, we need to make something that will last because these bark shoes, I'm like a shoe cobbler out here. And I didn't come out here to be a shoe cobbler. So I started making wooden shoes. When I got the first one made, of course, as the man I am, I gave it to Kelly. And I started making the second one, and then my knife broke. We were batoning the wood off the tree. And I was like shocked. And I was putting the knife through something more than it probably should have. But I was like, oh my God, if I ever get in this situation again, when I go out with 4 different blades, they say there's not one blade that can do everything. It just doesn't exist. Well, I went on a 5-month quest when I got back, and I bought like 30 different blades, trying everything out. Well, I go back to a Bowie knife. Well, I just do a machete next time. What am I going to do? And I found a wonderful ultimate survival blade called the M18 by my friend Todd K. Hunt. And I'm testing it still.
That's the one on your site, right?
Video. Yep, it's the one on my site. I'm getting one modified to, it's going to be a hybrid. It's going to be the SC M18, which is the Skull Crusher variant, because I'm making it a little bit more survival and military friendly on the handle. But other than that, it's going to look just like it does, because my big thing was I throw tomahawks. And I told Todd the first test I'm doing is taking this thing in my backyard to my targets for my tomahawk, and me and my son are going to chuck this thing. And when I threw that thing and it successfully stuck in the tree like a tomahawk, I knew I was on my way. And this blade, I challenge people. I call it the one blade to rule them all. This blade, if you got to be somewhere and you're going to be out there surviving, and you need to count on one thing that can be as much of an axe as it is a shovel, as it is a hammer, as it is a skinning blade, as it is a machete, a knife, a tomahawk, this is your thing. And it's a wonderful 16-inch piece of 1/4-inch steel made out of 01 steel, tested out 58 on the Rockwell pressure scale. A marvelous piece of equipment, handcrafted by Todd. Everyone's made with his spirit and love in every blade, and it's a wonderful piece of equipment. And guys look at me like, $600. I'm like, look, you'll pay over $600 for a rifle to save your life. Right. What happens when you go out in a survival situation? You need your life. You got to have something that's dependable and as hard as I am to count on, and that's why I'm going behind this thing.
You can't put a price on your life. That's
absolutely not
what it is.
Yeah. So you can see that thing there. It's a pretty crazy looking blade, and it looks like it belongs in the hands of the Skull Crusher. So it's 16 inches overall length. It's got a 10-inch blade, and looks like a crazy kitchen meat cleaver, but it's a wonderful thing.
Inches, man. That's huge.
Cool, man. Well, you guys can check that up on his website. I think we're going to wrap it up here. EJ, thank you very much, man. It's been a great conversation. I think we could go on for hours here. You can definitely carry a conversation.
As you can see, I'm a big talker, but like
I said, I got on.
Yeah, I'd absolutely love to come back on. Like I said, I'm looking for my next adventure. Not sure what it's going to be, but we got some stuff in the works. I'm getting ready to go out and do a lot of motivational speaking. So if you want me, contact me on my website. I guarantee you I won't disappoint, as you can tell. And like I said, I'm looking for my next thing. I just auditioned for the Mockingjay, which is the movie that's going to be the third in the series of the what is it? The
Hunger Games.
Hunger Games, yes. Sorry.
Oh, awesome.
So I just auditioned for that, and but like I said,
good luck on that.
Thank you. So look us up on Facebook, Broken Bones, Shattered Dreams. Please give your support. We're going to be taking donations very soon to make that happen. I'm also doing another thing on Indiegogo called What Must Be Done by my friend John Sorey. And so, like I said, I'm involved with a few projects and just trying to love life and back out training, getting in shape, ready for the next one. So
cool. I know that there's a
look me up at E J Snyder 72 on Twitter. Again, go to my website www.ejsnyder72.wix.com/skullcrusher. And please like my fan page. We're trying to get that numbers up. We're in 16 countries, 6 different languages now, so it's really going crazy. And Naked and Afraid's going worldwide. Just going to announce that right now.
Awesome.
I think next week we're going to be released in England, and we're going across the globe now internationally. So you're going to hear a lot more about it.
I know we got a few people listening in the UK, so you guys make sure you check that out.
Yeah,
it's it won't disappoint you. So
I actually did an interview yesterday with some magazine, and I'm doing another one tomorrow. So
cool,
awesome.
All right, guys. Well, I've enjoyed it a lot. Great to meet you guys via this Skype, Jason and Matt, and America. Keep watching, and remember, hard times don't last, but hard men do. So,
all right,
it was a pleasure talking with you, man.
Yeah. Hey, if you guys want to check our stuff out, you can visit our website directly at intellectualgentlemansclub.com. You can do a Google search. It'll pull you right to it. Please subscribe on iTunes if you haven't already. Give us a rating and a review. It really helps those numbers to get out there and get our word out. We'd really appreciate that. We're on Twitter at IGCcast. We have a Facebook page. You can email me directly if you have any comments or anything like that, right through the website. It's igccast@gmail.com. I'm open to anybody sending me anything out there. To support us, again, you can use our PayPal donate button on the website. Use our affiliate link ads on our website from Onnit and Amazon.com. And just do your typical sharing and liking, tweeting, retweeting, and all that stuff. So until next time, I just want to say thank you again. EJ, thanks for bringing the good conversation here. Matt, thanks for joining us again.
Always a pleasure.
And hang loose out there, everybody.